my hooligans in Brooklyn. Dead right, if they head right, Biggie there.
Welcome to Buck Life, the Hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fan podcast made by Hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fans for Hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fans. My name is Jacob. With me, as always, is my co-host Chuck Schilling. Chuck, how are you doing tonight?
Not too bad. Have you always called yourself Jacob here? I thought you were going by Jake most of the season.
Yeah, whatever.
He's changing it up today. Okay. No, not doing too bad tonight.
Well, we're recording this just after the Bucks lost their final game of the season to the Indiana Pacers, or at least what was left of the Indiana Pacers. They sat 4 starters, and the Bucks still managed to lose by a decent margin. They lost by 5, but it wasn't really that close if you actually watched the game. And as we're recording this, we're also watching as Golden State attempts to make history and win their 73rd game. As I'm saying this, they're up 20 with about 40 seconds left in the first half, so it appears as if they're going to get that 73rd win and make history. So I think me, my co-host, and our guests are probably happy about that because I don't think any of us are Bulls fans. Speaking of which, our guest today is once again Mr. Andy Robbie, coming to us live from beautiful Arizona. Andy, how are you tonight?
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Awesome year for the Bucks, huh?
Yeah, it seems par for the course. Like we're back in a time machine, back to the Herb Cole era. Once again, sorry, I probably shouldn't be watching this Golden State game as I'm recording this, as Steph Curry's also trying to hit 400 threes of the season right in front of my eyes. So now it's halftime and we can focus more on this, as you said, stellar season for the Milwaukee Bucks. They finish at, 33 wins, I believe?
33 wins.
33 wins. Again, it's kind of a throwback to those Herb Cole years where we would finish in the low to mid 30s, mediocre season, mediocre draft pick to show for it at the end of the season. And as of now, we're tied for 8th with New York for the best lottery odds. And by the end of tonight, it could be a 3-way tie with Denver.
Denver down 2 at the half. A win for them would be great for the Bucks. It increases our lottery balls and our odds at the coin flip of being 8th or 9th. So.
And in case any of our listeners were wondering how that works, if there's a 3-way tie or a 2-way tie, basically the amount of lottery combinations that you would have for that 8th spot are divided up evenly, except for with 3 teams it would be an odd number, so one team via a coin flip would get that one extra set of or combination to win the lottery, which would make it a very, very minute difference. But then also that coin flip determines if none of those teams move up into the top 3, 8th, 9th, and 10th draft slot. Andy, you were saying, or at least you had a look on your face like you wanted to say something. So man up and say it.
I mean, I don't know what the fuck we were doing these last few games. I mean, you had the Philadelphia game, which was a perfect opportunity to lose. And how are you going to go into overtime, play your starters, and end up winning that game? Like, just fucking embarrassing, dude. Team is a joke sometimes.
Well, and to me, it's not as a matter of like I was so mad that they won. It was how they won, because as you said, you're playing your starters. You're playing Chris Middleton, who was coming off of an injury. I think it was a hamstring injury.
Yep.
You play him 41 minutes in a meaningless game against a team like Philadelphia, fresh off an injury. Giannis, I believe, also had 40 minutes, and Jabari had over 30 minutes. So the fact that you're in these meaningless games, I don't understand what you really have to gain by going all out and playing these games as if you're still fighting for playoff positioning, or as if there's anything to be gained.
Yeah, I mean there were 2 games in the last 2 weeks that were really losable. That Philadelphia game and then the Orlando game was a few games prior to that. And with how tight the playoff bunching is, had we lost one of those 2 games, we'd be tied with New York, which would mean we are now going for 7th or 8th. And, we're going to coin flip, we're going to split the odds, boom, done. No 3-way tie, no 8th. And if we had lost 2 of them, we'd solely have 7th place.
Right.
It's
a lot of those games were there for the taking as far as, I mean, granted, we know NBA players and NBA coaches are not going to intentionally throw a game. That just doesn't really happen. But there's ways that you can maneuver things as far as your rotations, and probably ways that you should be running your rotation at this point anyways, where all your young guys should be playing. We saw a little bit of Damian Inglis tonight. I mean, finally, I think you want minutes to go to guys like him and Tyler Ennis rather than your Grievous Vasquez, your Greg Monroe. You know what those guys are. You know they're probably not a part of your future. You have these young players, and you should be playing them, getting them experience. And if you rack up more losses for your draft slotting, great. If not, if you win, if you beat Philadelphia by sitting Chris Middleton when there's nothing to gain and playing Damon Inglis, so be it. But as you said, that game was right there for the taking, and it was strange. This is probably the first time in my life as a Bucks fan where somebody hit a big shot and they're chest bumping and high fiving each other, and I was actually pissed off, like angry at the Bucks, like. Great, you beat the worst team in the history of the NBA barely in overtime. Like, I'm really, really happy for you guys, but it really kind of screwed us in the long run. And as you said, Chuck, there's a handful of games I can think of off the top of my head that were right there that we probably should have lost. And if you lose 3 of those games, we're tied with New Orleans New Orleans for 6th as far as lottery standings. So
yeah, the thing with the Philadelphia game, to me, Middleton had a hamstring injury. I wasn't even convinced it was a real hamstring injury. I thought it was one of those phantom injuries towards the end of the year. You shut a guy down. You want to see the young guys. You don't want to hurt his ego. He's got a little nagging injury, but maybe it's not too serious. Why bring him back and play him 40 minutes? There was just no reason for it. You could have kept him out. No one would have questioned it. It's one thing if you keep a player out too long and maybe the NBA questions, hey, is he really injured or are you just tanking? There were 2 games left, 3 games, whatever there was. There was no reason to be playing him at all at that point in time.
Well, even if you're going to play him, okay,
15
let him get
minutes,
into his rhythm, play
yeah.
25 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes in an overtime game coming off of a hamstring injury. It makes no sense. I mean, I don't think Jason Kidd really understands where this team is right now and what the situation that they're in right now. And another one I wanted to bring up was in that same game, I think Jabari dunked nasty on Nerlens Noel and fell down on his ass, and I think everybody in Bucks Nation was holding their breath there. You've pretty much made it a season now without Jabari getting hurt or re-aggravating any kind of injury, and they're very lucky in my eyes because playing him those amount of minutes, especially in these meaningless games, it really, really doesn't do anything for us, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And yeah, that would be the last thing that you'd want is for one of the key players to get hurt in one of these games. And granted, that dunk was like the number 1 play on SportsCenter and was all over the internet. But yeah, that was definitely a scary moment.
Well, we're going to get more into the Bucks offseason probably in another episode of the podcast, but we have some significant news to talk about in this week's episode. The last episode of the season, of the Bucks season anyways. We're going to keep coming at you in the offseason with some more stuff. But
hopefully an exciting offseason.
It's certainly exciting today as far as news on the arena front.
Yeah.
The Bucks held a press conference and announced that the groundbreaking ceremonies for the new arena will be June 18th of this year. And it'll also be their 2nd annual block party event. And if you remember last year, they revealed the new uniforms, and it was a huge success. So I'm hoping that this will be an even bigger event. But it's nice to finally have a tangible date that we can say, all right, we're good to go here.
Yeah, and I think it's smart to do this annual block party. I wasn't able to attend it last year. I'm trying to remember where I was. I was not in the state. I was traveling somewhere. No doubt. I mean, my wife and I like to travel. For anyone who knows me personally, I seem to take a lot of vacation. But yeah, we weren't. I wasn't able to attend. Were you there last year?
I wasn't there.
I didn't think you were either. So I remember getting the pictures on Facebook and Twitter of these new jerseys, and I think the Grand Admiral, who's been a guest, I think he was texting me some pictures, and it was phenomenal. Well done. I expect, we've only seen a handful of pictures of the arena. It would not surprise me one bit at the groundbreaking if there's new pictures and renderings of this arena, because they kind of had stuff up their sleeve. We knew the jerseys were coming last year at the block party, but I have a feeling they're just going to want to surprise with something else at this groundbreaking event. But no matter what, it's exciting. I posted a couple pictures on our Facebook feed. I went to the game against the Bulls a few weeks ago, and you could see the lots torn up. It's not the groundbreaking. They've got to do all that cleaning up of all the garbage that's buried in that lot. But so it's they've already kind of broken ground, but it's not the official groundbreaking, so to say. They've really just started cleanup. But exciting times to be had. I mean, that's only a little over 2 months from today because it's April 13th, June 18th. We're talking 2 months from now we're going to be breaking ground.
Well, there you go. Andy, are you going to fly up for that?
Not for the groundbreaking, but definitely plan on being there for the first game in that new arena. That's going to be a really exciting time. I'm hoping that they come out soon with like one of those 4D video type things that goes through kind of what the new arena is going to look like in the lobby area, through the concourse, and then out to the actual arena itself. That's going to be really, really exciting when they come out with something like that.
The little virtual tour or whatnot, whatever they call it. Well, they also released some more information as far as the logistics of the arena. It's 714,000 square feet compared to the BMO Harris Bradley Center, which is 550,000 square feet. A little bit less seating for basketball. It's 17,500 seats compared to 18,717 at the moment with the Bradley Center. 34 suites in the new arena compared to 68. But they also have what they're calling theater box seats, which are 180. We don't know for sure, but me and Chuck speculated that if you look at the renderings, they might be those kind of corner seats between the first and second level that kind of stick out. And then they also said 1,006 club seats. So it looks like it's going to be very, very different from the Bradley Center. The suites, I'm a little confused on going from 68 suites in the Bradley Center to 34 now. I imagine that might have something to do with the theater seating that they're talking about. And again, this is all very preliminary, so we'll know a lot more as time goes on.
It seems to me that less suites, because right now if you look at the suites at a Bucks game, a fair amount of them, they're not all full necessarily.
They're almost all empty.
And they're also, I've sat in a suite, they're nice, but they're nothing special. So my guess is these new suites are going to be really nice. You're talking the company that sponsors whoever's name is on this arena, whether that's BMO Harris again or Johnson Controls or Harley Davidson. You know, there's a lot of Milwaukee area companies that have been thrown around for potential naming rights. So those and the big companies, that's what I'm picturing for the suites. Those club seats, those could potentially be nicer luxury type seats as well, and almost as nice or nicer than the current suites. So, you know, it seems they're going to have 5 or 6 different levels of seating. You'll have your lower bowl, you'll have your upper bowl, you'll have your theater seating, your suites, your club seats, courtside, you know, whatever. There's going to be 10 different options for the different price points. So it is kind of weird that they're going to lower number of suites, but I think the theater and club seats are probably going to supplement that for the big dollar type spenders there. And then real quick before we go further, I just wanted the square footage, even though there's less seats, that's actually a 30% increase in square footage of the actual arena. So that's a lot of additional space for restaurants and stores and whatever else
or
they're going to throw in there.
Space for your legs, because when you go to the Bradley Center, you are basically sitting at a right angle, just 90 degrees, knees in your face.
That is one of my biggest wishes for the new arena is more leg room, because it is... When I'm watching a Bucks game, it's not as bad because you stand up sometimes and you cheer, but I've been there for concerts and it is the worst.
Yeah,
it's bad for sports games, but it's really bad when you're at a concert.
Yeah, me and Andy used to have season tickets, and especially with, if you want to say some of the stereotypical Wisconsin type people, you get them sitting close to you. There's not a whole lot of space to maneuver around.
Yeah, it's like flying on an airplane, you know, when you're stuck behind somebody of size. Don't have a lot of room. But, I'm so excited to see all the little details of the new arena.
More comfortable seats is also a big thing for me. The seats in the Bradley Center are awful, especially the front seats, the folding seats. The closer you get, the more uncomfortable the seats get.
Yeah, and they're an awful color, too. I mean, like about the ugliest blue that they could possibly be. So even the color of seats, you know, I'm excited about that. I'm just excited about everything. The toilet stalls, and everything.
Well, and I think they've been very strategic in the amount of information that they've been releasing for the new arena and the way that they're releasing it. Almost like I know Chuck's not a big fan of Apple, but when they kind of release new technology, they give you a little bit each time. So with this each announcement, we get a little bit more. There was a lot of talk about the technology in the new arena is going to be top notch. But you might see things like that if you get close or you're sitting in those club seats, little LCD screens or LED screens where you can make your order for food or beverage and they just bring it right to you. You don't even have to wait for a waiter. Just little things like that I've seen have been speculated. So as I said, I think as we get closer and closer, you're going to see more and more of these mini announcements to just keep people's excitement level top-notch.
On the topic of the ugly color of the seats, this is completely off topic from the Bucks, but Kia recently announced that they've got this new luxury car, the K900, and I was at my car dealer getting something done earlier today, and they were looking at pictures of this thing. This is a $60,000 car, and the interior leather seats are the same color as the Bradley Center
I was going to
seats.
say, I'm looking at the picture now. It almost looks like maybe they got a good deal on the seats.
Yeah.
And, once they start clearing them out, they're just going to throw them in the Kia.
If you want to see this, go to the Russ Darrow Kia website. They've only got one K900 in stock, and it's got the ugliest interior seats. I mean, this car on the outside doesn't look all that bad. It's a luxury car. It's got a lot of nice features, but I don't know what they were thinking with this interior leather seating.
It comes complete with nacho stains on it, I think.
It's awful. That was just random, not related to the Bucks, but you got to tie everything in the world together. So
let's talk about money with the new arena. They released some financial details. The cost of the arena is right now estimated at about $524 million, so a little bit over what they initially projected, which I think most people expected that to happen. But as detailed in the plan, the Bucks are on the hook for those charges, not any extra public financing. So as compared to the Bradley Center was built for $91 million, if you look at it in today's dollars, they estimate that'd be about $182 million. So in comparison,
about three times the cost.
It's going to be a lot nicer or a lot more expensive. To breaking it down just real quick, $274 million or 52% of the arena is coming from private money from Herb Cole from the Milwaukee Bucks new ownership group. $250 million of it will be public money, or 48%, and $47 million of that will come from the city of Milwaukee. And another big, I guess, I don't know if it was expected or not, but it's a 30-year lease that the Bucks are signing with huge financial penalties for breaking that lease. So in other words, the Bucks are going to be here to stay. There's no benefit to the ownership group taking the team and moving them to a more lucrative or a bigger market in that. So based on a 30-year lease, I think I'll be 63 years old by the time they're up for another lease. So the very good news that by the time I'm hopefully a grandfather, I'm still watching Bucks in Milwaukee.
And I believe the lease was 30 years from the opening of the arena, not now. So we're actually talking, 33 years from now? Are we slated to open 2018 season or 19? I don't remember what they're projecting.
I think it's 18-19.
Yeah, so we're talking 2.5 years from now that they're going to open this thing. So I'll be a little older than 63. But I'm happy when they brought those numbers out to see that they're sticking to the commitment that the team is responsible for the overflows. Because as someone who is opposed to public financing, it's important to me that as we go into these overflows, we don't stick it to the taxpayers. So far they're holding up their end of the bargain. It's only an extra $24 million. I say only $24 million as if that's some small amount of money. But, it's nice to see they're following through with that. So when this thing ends up costing $600 million, the Bucks will foot the rest of the bill. And it is exciting to know that they are here for the long haul. It's exciting for us as Bucks fans.
Andy, anything to add before we move on to this beautiful report that I read yesterday?
No, I mean, that was the goal the whole time, to make sure that the Bucks stayed in Milwaukee and had a nice new arena. So, it's great to see things rolling, and couldn't be happier.
Quick update before we move on. As I'm watching this, Steph Curry just hit his 400th three of the season. And another update, Chris Anderson, the Birdman, is still in the NBA. I did not realize that, playing for Memphis.
Well, that makes sense. They do have all the most punchable players in the league on Memphis now.
They're almost at the Clippers level.
The exact, that's them and the Clippers are right there. But when the Clippers had Matt Barnes, that was just the worst.
It was unfair when they had Matt Barnes.
Now that Matt Barnes is on Memphis, they're 1-2, 1A and 1B.
Absolutely. But the report that I want to bring up now is from Gary Wolfel of the Racine Journal-Times here in Wisconsin.
Take it with a grain of salt.
So, yes, there's some people that will question how reputable the source is on this, but Gary Wolfel reported that both Bucks general manager John Hammond and Bucks head coach Jason Kidd possibly may not return next season to the Bucks, that they both could be in a little bit of hot water. So, again, because of the source, maybe you may question the validity, but to me, there's a little bit of smoke here, just based on the fact that the Bucks, who are usually very active at the trade deadline, and from the reports that we heard, they were very, very active in trying to get a deal done. And I even heard a report that they had a deal done, but that the ownership group nixed it at the last second. So if there is anything valid to this, perhaps that's a sign that the owners don't want some people who possibly may not be around next year making future moves for the roster or the makeup of the team. I don't know. Are you buying it, Andy?
I don't know, because, last season we expected to struggle. We ended up making the playoffs. Now this season we expected to build on making the playoffs, and we struggled a little bit. I guess I wouldn't be surprised to see Hammond go. I don't think that Kidd's going to go. I really, really don't think now that Kidd will end up being promoted or whatever to president or GM. But I could honestly see Kidd being back to coaching another year. I could see Hammond being let go, and maybe, I have no idea who could take his place off the top of my head, but I could possibly see him being a little bit of a scapegoat here.
Yeah, Hammond is just such a weird case because he's been here 8 years now. It is 8 years, right?
Yep.
Right on that. So in 8 years, we've had no success that justifies him keeping his job. So by that measure, I'm okay with him being gone. But at the same time, he's made some decent draft picks, and he's put the team in a position that our future is very bright. So it's, on the one hand, I'm saying, oh, he deserves to keep his job. Look what we've got going forward. But other than the three core pieces, and Jake and I were talking about this during the Bucks game, Middleton, Jabari, Giannis, those are keepers. Everyone else on the team is disposable as far as I'm concerned going forward. So based on the big picture, there's absolutely no reason to keep Hammond around. It's just the team is, yes, we have a very bright future, and we're in a good position to hopefully be in the finals, winning a championship in the next 5 to 10 years. But that almost seems to be in spite of Hammond because of all the other garbage that's been put around these good pieces year in and year out.
Yeah, and, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Hammond because I don't really have an opinion on John Hammond one way or the other. Did he get kind of a raw deal during the Herb Cole ownership period? Yeah, I think so. By most accounts, it appears that much like his predecessor, Larry Harris, that his hands were kind of tied in some of the moves that he may have wanted to make or tried to make, and the ownership group would step in and say, sorry, that's not happening. But as you said, he's been here. It's going to be, if he's back next year, that'll be 9 years. And what do we have to show for it? We have a few playoff wins. I mean, we haven't won a playoff series. I don't know many GMs that could survive that, save for an Ernie Grunfeld, but I'd even say Ernie's had a little bit more success down in Washington. So I kind of, going into this year, I figured if the Bucks struggled, that Hammond was going to be the designated fall guy, and that, maybe if Kidd wanted to, because it seems like Kidd has an awful lot of pull within this team, they could fire him and that would give him another year. But if you listen to what most people will tell you, Jason Kidd's been calling the shots as GM for the past at least a year, and anyway, so really Hammond is kind of irrelevant at this point.
Yeah, to me, it's Hammond really in his time in the Bucks never got a fair shake. He had Herb Cole and the cronies over him, and now he's got Jason Kidd and the new cronies over him. It's unfortunate. He might be a brilliant basketball mind, but I don't think he's ever going to get a fair shake here in Milwaukee. So maybe for both parties involved, it's best that we just move on. And I think he very well could be the fall guy.
Well, and I found out today, or I saw some pictures that the press conference that the Bucks had today, that Jason Kidd was there and very vocal and talking to people, and John Hammond was nowhere to be seen at the press conference. So maybe that means nothing. Maybe you can look into that. I don't know. My gut says that I don't think Kidd is here for the long haul. I think by the way he's coaching and all these meaningless wins that he's trying to rack up, it says something that either number one, he's not here for the long haul or his heart's not in it, or number two, it's just utter stupidity that he doesn't understand where the team is and why that we should be playing the younger guys. But I don't know. I think that despite or no matter what happens with the GM position, that I think Jason Kidd's really going to be calling the shots, and that was kind of set in stone when we traded for him, because it technically was a trade that we brought Kidd over, and I mean, that was speculated on even before that trade was finalized. So my guess would be Kidd's still going to be calling the shots. I don't know. What do you guys think of that, Andy? What's your thoughts on the idea of Jason Kidd being the Bucks pseudo general manager moving forward?
Definitely don't want it, but I don't know if I'm in the minority here. I guess I'll have to ask you guys that back. But
You're white, so no.
I do want Kidd to stick around as coach. I do think that he brings some good qualities to the Bucks. I mean, every time the Bucks bring in a free agent player, I mean, you're definitely hearing them say they want to play for Jason Kidd. I think he brings some credibility to the team. He's respected by a lot of players around the league. I think that if we're in negotiations with a free agent that we actually want, not necessarily a guy who Jason Kidd's going after, but just in general, a good free agent that we want on our team, I think having Jason Kidd as your coach adds some credibility to the team. But I'll ask you guys, if Jason Kidd sticks around as just coach and they bring in another GM and it's understood that that GM is going to be the GM, granted he's going to have some input from the coach in moves, would you want to keep Jason Kidd around just strictly as a coach?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to question it a little bit, because here's the thing that I keep coming back to with Jason Kidd when it comes to him as a head coach. What does he really do as far as the in-game aspect of coaching? Because we know that he has his defensive specialist, Sean Sweeney, who runs the complete defensive system. Kidd has nothing to do with that. And then you look at the in-game aspects like drawing up plays out of timeouts, things like that. Kidd doesn't do that either. So what is he really doing during that time other than maybe standing around calling plays, calling the offense? And when you have a system like that, I wonder who's accountable, who are these guys answering to? If there's a defensive breakdown, are they talking to Kidd about it? Are they talking to Sweeney about it? It just raises a lot of questions for me. And I'll get into it a little bit more in a minute here, but as far as him as possibly calling the shots as GM, it's an utter disaster. But I don't know. As the coach, Chuck, what do you think? Do you think he's worth keeping around?
It's like a lot of things in the Bucks organization. We just don't have a clue what the power structure is. I think as a coach, he certainly brings a certain level of respect just because of his time as a player. He is one of the great point guards of our generation. I don't know if I sat down and made a ranking of top 50, top 100 players of all time, where would Jason Kidd go? He'd be somewhere, in that upper echelon of players. So that certainly commands respect out of these other players and the young guys who grew up watching him. But at the same time, you're right that, he's not there drawing up plays in a timeout. He's not doing much. You see him talking and whatever else, but
well, and I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just ignorant and I don't understand what really goes on, but it's just from what I see or what I gather.
Right, and it's just one of those things that, like you said, we do know that they have the defensive coach, we have the offensive coach. So what is he doing? And I guess you see it in the NFL where the teams will have a head coach who kind of manages the game, and then you get an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator. We're almost in that structure, it seems, which is strange for the NBA, where you only have 5 coaches. You don't have, 40 coaches like the NFL has. They have so many coaches. But it seems like that, and maybe it's something that we'll see more of in the future, specialized coaches in the NBA. I really don't know. It's just like the front office. I don't know the power structure of who's doing what, who's making what calls, and like you said, who's accountable for anything.
Well, and I mean, you talk about the front office. Let's just look at, in a vacuum, the moves that have happened since Kidd became the quote unquote head coach. Again, who knows what's really going on there, but some of the big ones were when we traded Brandon Knight. I don't think that was the wrong move. I know there's some out there that still think that Brandon Knight was the key to the Bucks playing so well last year. Maybe they're right, but they knew that they weren't going to re-sign Knight for the money that he wanted, so they had to move on. No problem with that, but when you take on a player like Michael Carter-Williams, who is clearly flawed, when you could have had a potentially very high draft pick, which was the Lakers pick, which it could be anywhere from anything from 4 or beyond this year, or it's unprotected next year. To me, that shows short-sightedness that they clearly were looking at right now, and then they could sell it as in the future. Then you look at the past offseason with the signings of Greg Monroe. Okay, that's your big splashy signing in that. Then you re-sign John Henson, who plays the same position for $11 million per year, and he barely plays this year. You give up granted it's protected, but a first-round pick and a second-round pick for a journeyman point guard in Grievous Vasquez, who I believe in the same day they traded Zaza Pachulia and Jared Dudley and got literally nothing in return for them, who I think would be similarly valued players as far as veterans that you could stick on a contender, help a bench. I think if you leave him in that sort of role, it's going to be a disaster. Another small one, you pick up a guy like Steve Novak this year after you're clearly out of the playoff race. Instead of signing somebody from the D-League that maybe has some potential, I know they brought in Jared Cunningham, but surprise, he's a Jeff Schwartz client to add to the, I believe, 9 Jeff Schwartz clients that we have on the team. To me, that, again, it's short-sightedness. It doesn't make any sense for where the team is. What does Steve Novak accomplish for the team, even if he's healthy, that he wouldn't do just maybe being a shooting coach or just sitting on the end of the bench? It made little to no sense. So I think if you give Kidd this responsibility or continue to let him have it, good God, I don't know where the team's going to go with the type of moves that he makes.
Yeah,
I guess I said it all.
Some of the moves were definitely Jason Kidd moves, but I think you have to be somewhat fair here. I mean, if you're not going to give Kidd any credit for any of the coaching decisions that were made, you also can't blame him for every single bad move that the Bucks made. I mean, was re-signing Henson really a Jason Kidd move? I don't know. Vasquez, by all reports, was a Jason Kidd move and a fucking terrible move at that. But I mean, I don't think that it's fair to blame Kidd on every move because I don't think that he had his hand in every single move that the Bucks made.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I think there's 3 moves that we know Kidd had his hand on. The first one being Michael Carter-Williams. Obviously in hindsight, we definitely want that Lakers pick, not Michael Carter-Williams, but all reports are that Kidd wanted Michael Carter-Williams. Number 2, the signing of Greg Monroe, which actually, even though I don't think he's a good fit here, as long as you trade him, you created an asset out of nothing. You had nothing, you had cap space, you sign him. If you trade him and get something back, whatever. I'm fine with that move. The Grievous Vasquez trade, which was just the worst of the 3 because you are giving up assets for a garbage player who you could literally sign someone who was a complete free agent without giving up anything who would have given you what Grievous Vasquez could. Even if Grievous Vasquez had a better season than he did, you could have got that for nothing rather than wasting assets on it. So those are the 3 moves for sure that we know Jason Kidd had his hand on, and none of them, I mean, the Monroe one's fine, but the other 2 are negative.
Well, and you talk about the coaching thing. Sure, there's some things that you could talk about. The Bucks' defense last year was great. Again, was that Kidd? Was that Sean Sweeney? It appears it was Sean Sweeney. The one thing I think you can for sure give him credit for is the moving of Giannis to point guard, because that was something that we saw when Kidd first arrived in Milwaukee and Giannis was playing in the summer league for the Bucks. They tried him there. So obviously that's something that Kidd's been thinking about. I hope when he did it, it was with the idea of it being somewhat of a tank move that you can develop Giannis a little bit more and maybe rack up some losses in the process. But judging by the way he's coached in the last few weeks, I don't think that was the case. So I'll give him credit for the Giannis to point guard move. I mean, that's still, I guess, the jury's out on that a little bit. I think it's going to work out great. The numbers have been great. He's still got some things to work on as far as being a point guard. But so I'll give Kidd credit there. And I'll also agree with you that he definitely garners respect from players. And he's somebody that players are, if he says something, they're going to listen to him. Other than that, he's, again, the jury's just out for me. He's been a head coach for 3 years. 2 of those years, it seems as though there's been some sort of friction as far as within management or with ownership. So it doesn't really bode well for the future in my eyes.
Yeah, it's if he's just a figurehead coach that the players have to respect him and the other guys are running the show. It's not the worst situation you can be in. My biggest fear is that he gets promoted to president of basketball operations or general manager, because as much as there are some questions about his coaching, the minutes the guys have played down the stretch here, I have much less issue with that than I do with over some of the trades and other issues. And there's nothing that he's done as a player or as a coach and whatever decisions he's made so far, there's nothing that makes him qualified to be in the position of general manager. He hasn't done any scouting as far as I know, or any of this, the things you want your general manager to have done. It's, it's different. You're not a general manager, you're a player, which does qualify you to do some of the coaching stuff.
Well, you talk about the scouting. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's another thing that supposedly happened was this past NBA draft when we picked Rashad Vaughn. Supposedly Hammond and all the scouts were dead set on Bobby Portis, and basically Kidd overruled him, and he wanted Vaughn out of UNLV. And after the season, you can't argue it. Vaughn's had one of the worst rookie seasons for a first round pick that's ever been recorded. So. Not looking so good yet. Maybe he turns into a great shooter, great piece for the Bucks. But again, it seems like that was a decision that was not made out of much education. I could see, and I'm embellishing a little. I could see maybe kids seeing like a YouTube video and being like, "Oh man." I mean, I'm watching this kid understanding
his
that he could be a part of a future.
Yeah, he watched his and one mixtape and said, "Oh yeah, I want to draft that kid."
But all right, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, don't you think that maybe he's bound to get lucky? After all these shit moves where he's like 0%, he's got to get lucky on one of these moves and at least be like 10% decent.
Well, maybe we'll get lucky in the lottery.
But is that the measuring stick? You want a GM who gets lucky?
No, I don't want him as GM.
That's my problem. My biggest fear is this offseason is that Hammond takes the fall and Kidd is put into a position where he's the one who has 100% authority. Because even if he's the one making the decisions right now, he's still bouncing that off of Hammond and the owners and this. I don't want Kidd to have less people to answer to and brainstorm with, whatever the power structure is right now. I don't want him to have more of that power.
Last thing before we move on, who do you want to be the Bucks GM/coach combination next year? Keep in mind you can name anybody that would potentially be available. So I'll start first. My 2 guys, I want Larry Harris and Larry Krystkowiak. No, just kidding. I would love to see David Blatt, who I think got a raw deal in Cleveland as the head coach, if I could pick anybody. And I really like what Sam Hinkie did in Philadelphia as far as accumulating assets. I think he's another guy that got a raw deal, and he didn't get to see his plan through. And there was even reports that ownership was stepping in and after he had acquired all these draft choices and everything, and then trying to dictate who he's going to take. So I had heard that he wanted to draft Kristaps Porzingis, and that ownership basically stepped in and said, nope, we're taking Okafor, despite the fact that they had all the similar players with Embiid and Nerlens Noel. So again, that's just my dream pick would be David Blatt, Sam Hinkie. You guys feel free to ridicule me. Andy, who's your picks?
I haven't thought at all about GM, so I'm not sure there. But on coach, I would definitely want Damon Jones back. He's coaching D-League for the Cavs. That's my boy. So I'd love Damon Jones to get a chance at head coaching.
Sideline would be entertaining for sure.
That's what I'm saying. He brings the energy, dude.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from this, because I haven't given it any thought. I kind of don't think about these things until we know that we're looking for a replacement. Plus, I have this feeling that if Hammond gets the axe, that kid is going to be the one who gets promoted into that GM, whether officially in name or not in name, whatever the case
Well,
may
and
be.
Rod Thorne was a guy that they brought in earlier in the year as a consultant, so
Yeah, so
there's more smoke for you.
my biggest takeaway is with the 76ers there is it's nice to know we're not the only team that has meddling owners and whatever else kind of not letting the GM and the basketball minds do basketball mind things. So, yeah, that was all I really took away from there. I haven't really given any thought, so I'm not in any position to give a qualified answer there.
Fair enough. We're going to move on now. Last little topic for tonight is the NBA playoffs are set to begin. As we're recording this, the last game of the night would be Golden State and Memphis. Steph Curry just scored a big bucket to put Golden State up 20 with a minute left in the third. But what I want to know is, what do you guys think you're going to see in the playoffs this year? I know I'm not going to see Kobe Bryant, and that's a shame. Not really. Never been a fan. But what are your predictions? I guess I'll start. I predicted before.
Hold on, before you start there,
right.
we got to get a Kobe update since you named
Kobe
it.
update.
13 for 32 for 35 points. Now, the media is going to sell this story about how he's scored so many points because they already are. He had 22. There's a ESPN put out a tweet. Oh, he went off for 22 points in the first half. He had 22 points on 20 shots. I mean, that's horrible. He's got 35 points, but he's 13 for 32, 3 for 15 from beyond the arc.
Who would ever think that a guy that gave himself a nickname would take 32 shots in less than 3 quarters?
So that's going to be the narrative there, but I just had to interject with that. Now we can go talk
Corpse
playoffs.
of Kobe update. But I started the beat when we did our prediction prediction show in the beginning of the season. First off, I would like to eat some crow. I thought the Bucks would win 48 games, I believe. So
I don't think it was that high. I was going to dig up the audio. I've just been so busy working, I didn't get a chance to. But
that's all right.
I believe you were 45 or 46, and then Patrick was one less game than you, and I was one less game than Patrick.
Gotcha.
We were in the 43
Either way, I was
to
dead
40.
fucking wrong.
Yeah,
you suck.
We were all off by about at least 10 games, maybe as many as 15.
So, but I did say that my prediction for the finals was a boring one. I just picked a repeat. I thought Cleveland was hands down the best team in the East, and I thought Golden State was hands down the best team in the West. So they're making me look smart so far. Both are the number 1 seeds in their conference. But looking at it now, I'm going to go ahead and predict the finals of Golden State. I think even though that they've gone through so much for this record, which it looks like they're going to set as we sit quarter left in this game, as Steph hits another 3. My God, is he insane. But I think Golden State takes it in the West. They're going to kick it up another notch, and I'm going to do a little bit of a sleeper surprise pick. Sorry. Again, it's tough when you're watching a live game. I saw Zach Randolph just bank in a half-court shot. I don't think they gave it to him.
I think the clock was expired, but he had to defend, like he was leaning forward with a defender in his face and banked in a 3 as the quarter ended. That was pretty ridiculous.
Fun to watch. But my sleeper Eastern Conference pick is I'm going with Boston. I think that they're going to be matched up with Atlanta in the first round, and I think that's going to be kind of a cakewalk for them. They can play at the pace that they want to play at, and they are just terrific defensively. And they have a great young coach in Brad Stevens, and I think they're going to meet up with Cleveland in the second round. And you have a lot of guys that can cause trouble for LeBron, and I really like Jay Crowder matching up against LeBron defensively. And I think you look at a guy like Avery Bradley is going to give Kyrie Irving fits defensively. And on offense, I think Kyrie's going to have trouble keeping up with Isaiah Thomas. He's a little quickie and a tremendous scorer. And we know that Kyrie's not a great defensive player. I just think you're going to see a little bit of an upset here. And LeBron has all the tension with Cleveland, supposedly. There's all the rumors about him leaving again. I could just see this being the catalyst for everything blowing up there again and LeBron leaving again, which would be freaking hilarious.
I need to interject there real quick because you just set me up, but who doesn't like a little quickie?
Yeah.
So,
Dude, I'm 31 years old. That's all I know now.
yeah. So, for me, it's kind of strange. I'm looking at the playoff matchups here, and in the East, all the teams that I would potentially expect to win. If I'm looking at these and I'm saying who's going to win, I think Cleveland beats Detroit. Indiana, I probably picked to beat Toronto, even though Toronto's got the home court advantage. They've got a history of not being the best team in the playoffs. I think Miami's a better team than Charlotte, and they win that 3-6 matchup. And then in the 4-5 matchup, I think Boston wins. They, even though they're the 5th seed and Atlanta will have home court, they have the same exact record. Actually, teams 3 to 6 in the East all finished 48 and 34. That's some pretty tight seeding there. So Atlanta also has a history of not being the best playoff team.
Chuck's
That
drunk.
said, yeah, the guy who doesn't drink. That said, all those teams that I would expect to lose won the regular season matchup. The Pistons beat Cleveland 3-1. The Raptors beat Indiana 3-1, and Atlanta beat the Celtics 3-1 in the regular season. So I think the East is going to be a very interesting
toss-up.
It's a very competitive compared to where the East has been the last 5 years, where they've kind of been the whipping boy of the Western Conference. The East is very competitive this year.
Nothing will surprise me in the Eastern Conference this year.
Yeah, I think
Save for maybe Detroit knocking off Cleveland.
Yeah.
Anything else, though?
If it was a 5-game series, that wouldn't surprise me all that much. But in a 7-game series, that's probably the only thing that could surprise me would be Cleveland beating Detroit. I'd probably also be a little surprised with Charlotte beating Miami. But that said, nothing will really surprise me. I will still pick Cleveland to come out of the East if we're going to go on the record here for predictions. And in the West, the top 4 seeds, I don't see any reason they would lose. I think we're going to see chalk in the first round there. To me, there's a significant step down after you get beyond the Clippers into the Portland, Memphis, Dallas, and Houston. I'm going to go with chalk all the way up to the Western Conference Finals, and then I think San Antonio edges out Golden State. I just have this gut feeling, San Antonio, I think they went 2-2 against Golden State in the regular season, or 2-1. I know they won 2. I don't know if they played 4 games or 3. But San Antonio, I think they are in this, and I think they are going to pull it off, even though I think Golden State's probably a better team. And then I probably have San Antonio winning the championship this year. Another one for Duncan.
Andy?
Yeah, I can definitely say I'll be, along with everybody else, will be really disappointed if the Western Conference Finals doesn't end up being San Antonio and Golden State. I do think that Golden State will end up coming out of the West. On the East, I'll go with the sleeper as well, and I will actually say that Toronto will end up coming out of the East. I just think that they're a good team, really good at playing together. I could just see them pulling off an upset for some reason. Who knows if it'll happen? But I do think then Golden State will ultimately win it all.
No arguments here.
Yeah, neither of your guys' picks they're not something so crazy that I'm gonna call you an idiot or anything. I just, we gotta make our picks, and we each have some sort of sleeper / upset pick going to the finals. So
yeah, I kind of like it.
Yeah, I like that we're not going chalk there.
Sure.
It'd be pretty easy to go Cleveland, Golden State.
None
of us have that.
Season,
None of us have Cleveland, Golden State at this point in the season.
But that's going to do it for our podcast now. The next one, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Bucks offseason, including the draft. I'm thinking maybe if we don't have one in between now and then, that maybe we could do or attempt another live podcast, possibly during the draft lottery drawing, to see where the Bucks are going to be picking. Because if anybody wants to hear me climax in my pants if the Bucks move up, I think that would be a really, really entertaining thing to hear live. So perhaps we'll do that. That's on May 19th.
Yeah, so that's a month from now. Hopefully we'll get one in between then. I think it's been a month since our last episode. We were you went on an anniversary. You went on an anniversary trip. My brother-in-law graduated from basic training, so I went down to visit him in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. So we both had some time traveling, and we kind of neglected it here. But I think
Not that we missed much in between.
Yeah, personally, I'd like to do one more to kind of talk upcoming off-season stuff, especially if we have any moves with Hammond and Kidd and all that. And then I think a live episode for the draft lottery would be very exciting, though it could end up like our trade deadline live coverage where it's very anticlimactic because our odds of moving up are not good.
Yeah, more than likely nothing would happen. But,
however,
the slight chance of me being my L
if
would
they
be hilarious.
did, that moment when you watch the draft and there's that moment comes that it's either your pick or you're moving up, and then it's someone else. When we moved up and we got Bogut, we were supposed to go.
Yeah.
And you just get that excitement, and then you're sitting there and you're saying, are we 3? Are we 2? Are we 1? So then every time when you get to those top picks, and I remember this during the Jabari year, we had the best odds, and you're still worried. You get to 4, and you're like, no, we didn't move down 4 spots, and it was building. You're right. We were all at that bar together,
yeah.
So we were all out together, and that was pretty exciting. So I think our goal, hopefully, get on a little more regular schedule, get one episode in before the draft lottery, and maybe do a live lottery special, which would probably be anticlimactic. But real quick, I got to do a Kobe update before we sign off here.
No.
Kobe is 15 for 38 for 40 points. I mean, he is
Stud.
40 points. That'll be the talk. Remember, he scored 40 points in his last game. What a
4
great
of 18
game.
on 3 too.
Yeah.
Stud.
Oh,
So
he's jacking them up.
The narrative, we know what the narrative is going to be, and that just shows you how foolish the media is and your average fan who doesn't look at the big picture of efficiency and all these advanced stats that we here at Buck Life love. We love advanced stats. So yeah, we'll hopefully not go a month without another episode. I don't think we don't have any big trips coming up between now and then. So we'll see you soon.
Well, and we do want to thank you guys for joining us throughout this whole season. We hope you continue to join us throughout the off season and into next year. And Andy, thanks again for being our last second guest here. Really appreciate it, brah.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, so that's going to do it for the Buck Life podcast. We'll see you next time very, very soon. Thank you, Bucks fans.